Welcome folks, my name is Tom Beatty. I'm the chair of the Web Design and Development program at Newmont College of Computer Science, and today we're going to do some JavaScript programming. Okay, today we're going to talk about accessing data through APIs, or Application Programming Interfaces. And there are lots of APIs available online that can provide you information, news data, weather data. Today we're going to actually use an API that provides trivia database questions so that you can make your own trivia game. So we're going to access the Open Trivia Database, and I'm just going to open up a tab here, call it OpenTDB.com. There we are, the Open Trivia Database, and if we click on their API, this actually helps you create the API call that you want to have. And I think we're going to say we just want one question. And I'm going to choose Science and Computers as the category. And difficulty level, any difficulty. Select the type, multiple choice. You could do multiple choice or true false. And we're going to use the default encoding. So I'm going to click on Generate API URL. And so this is the URL that you would use to access the API. And you can see here we've got this HTTPS opentdb.com/api.php ? And then here are the different parameters. We said amount 1, it's the number of questions. The category 18 is the computers category, and then type for multiple choice. So if I open up another browser tab and I paste that in there, yours probably doesn't look as good as mine. Yours looks more like this, I would imagine. This is how JSON normally looks, but I'm using a JSON formatter extension for Chrome. And if you want to get that, you can just do Chrome JSON formatter extension. And mine says remove from Chrome because I've already got it installed. It's a great little extension. I highly recommend it if you're working with JSON files. By the way, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, because the way it formats is it formats very much the way we create objects in JavaScript. So you can see here we've got our curly braces, and inside we've got key value pairs. The only real difference between the JavaScript objects we were creating and JSON is that keys must have quotes around them when using JSON, and we weren't doing that before when we were creating our objects. In truth, in JavaScript you could put quotes around the keys and it would still work, but we didn't do that. So anyway, once you've got the extension, then you'll see the results that we get. And I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. So you can see I've got curly braces here, so it's a JavaScript object. And we've got a key value pair here, response code 0. We've got another key value pair where the key is results and the value is actually an array. You can tell because we've got these square brackets. And there's only one element in this array, but it's a full JavaScript object. And so we've got open curly braces again, and we've got a category, a type, difficulty, the question, a correct answer, and then another array of incorrect answers. And since we chose multiple choice, there are always 3 incorrect answers that it gives you. And so you can take a look and see the question that gives you. I can hit reload, and it gives me another question. I hit reload again, it gives me another question. So every time I access this URL for the API, it's going to give me another question in the Science Computers category. All right, so now that we understand that, let's actually write some code. So I've got just a standard index.html, the template that we've been using, and I've just added the script tag. And I think I'm also going to add a div tag here that's going to have an ID of content. And that's where we'll put the question and information that we load. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go now to script.js. Now there are several ways that you can load API content. One way that you can do it, that people always did it in the past was using an XML HTTP request. And it uses a callback, and when the data is loaded from the internet, it runs what's in the callback. We're going to be using a fetch, which relies on a promise. This was established in ES 2015. There are other ways. You can use async await, which was established a little bit later. But I'm just going to use a fetch. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to go ahead and create a variable that targets that content element that we created. And now I'm going to do my fetch. And inside the fetch, we're going to put the URL that we want to access. And we already know what that is. So we're going to copy this and paste it right in there. And then at the end of this line, I'm not putting a semicolon. I'm going to hit enter because, and then I'm actually going to tab in so it's easier to read. I'm going to put a dot then. And basically, this is still all part of the fetch. This is not a new command. JavaScript is, for most loading in JavaScript, you want to do it asynchronously. And what that means is that you can go and load, tell the program to go and load a file on the internet. And it'll say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and load it. But it'll keep running the program as you go. And I'll explain this in a little more detail later, but you need to manage that because it doesn't necessarily have the data yet. And so you need to handle that in JavaScript in such a way. And one way to do it is with a promise. So I'm going to say, it's going to say, okay, let's fetch this data and then take the response that you get and pass it in to this function and return response.json. And basically what that's doing is that says, okay, we're going to get a response, and we're going to take that response, that's a promise, and we're going to take that promise and we're going to turn it into a JSON object. And that JSON object is going to go into JSON underscore data, which we will then pass into this function and console log json.data. I'm going to put a semicolon here, and notice I didn't put one here. That's again because this is all part of the same line. And I'm going to save that, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to come back here, refresh, and you'll notice it got some data. I've got an object over here. I open it up, and there are my results. Results, remember, we said that was an array. We open that up, and at element 0, we open that up, and we can see, oh look, we've got a question, we've got a correct answer, we've got our difficulty, we've got 3 incorrect answers, everything we need. And if I hit refresh and do that again, you'll see I get a different question with different correct answer and different incorrect answers. So that's working. I'm getting the data. But I don't really want to console log it, do I? I think what would be better is to output it to this content. And there's actually a lot there to output. So I'm going to create a function for showing my data. And this function, you'll pass in data. And we'll create my question. Well, it's not really my question. I'm going to call it the question. And I'm going to use backticks. And not only so that I can do string templating, but so I can do multi-line strings. We've done this before. And so I'm going to do a bit of HTML here. And we'll say $, data dot. Now here's where it gets tricky. We need to figure out how to call the information we want from data. And so I'm going to come back and let's look here. So this is actually data. This object we're putting into the variable data. So inside data we have results, which is an array, and we want element 0. So I'm going to say data dot results element 0 dot, because we're going to go down another layer inside 0, and let's get the question. So let's click over here, dot question. And I've got this in an h1 tag. And let's save this. See if we got this right. Oh, I've got no output yet because I didn't actually modify content. So content equals, content.innerHTML equals the question. I haven't actually called show data yet. And so after my data is loaded, I'm going to say show data, and I'm going to pass in JSON data, which will pass in to our data variable, and that's all going to work. There we go. So here's our question. And maybe you also want to put your various possible answers in there. So you could say h2 $, results 0 dot correct answer. We can see that. Sure enough. Now, it gets a little trickier for the incorrect answers, because the incorrect answers go down another layer. They're inside an array. So we would do data dot, you know what? Actually, pause the video now, think about it, see if you can figure out what the 3 incorrect answers would look like. Okay, if you pause the video and figured it out, great. If not, let's go ahead and say incorrect answers. And if we look back here, we see we've got results 0. We did our question, our correct answer. Incorrect answers is another array, and we open that up and it's got a 0, 1, and 2 element. So incorrect answers is an array. 0 would be the first one. Make sure you close your curly brace there. Copy it, paste it. 1, 2. I refresh, and there's my correct answer and my 3 incorrect answers. So you could probably see how you could turn these into buttons or divs that you style and work like buttons, like we've done in previous videos. and maybe mix them up randomly, keeping track of where the correct answer is so that it's not always the first option. And before you know it, you've got a trivia game. But the important thing for this video is understanding how to load that data. Now, I mentioned before that it's really important to understand the asynchronous nature. Let me show you why. If I were to say console.log JSON data, and well, actually, let me do this. Let's see. No, that'll work. Anyway, I say console.log JSON data. I save this. Let me declare JSON data outside my fetch there. Let's refresh and see what happens. Ooh, I get an undefined on line 25, which is right here. But then it knows it on line 21. And again, that's because of how we're using the fetch to handle our asynchronous data. It tries to load it. It says, okay, we've got a promise coming that once it gets there, it's going to become a JSON object that we put into JSON_data. And then anything that happens in here won't actually run until that data has come in. But it's going to continue running anything else in the application. So it runs this line before it actually has the data. It waits on this one. Now, one other thing that you might consider doing, it's a good practice, is to put a catch in here in case there's an error. If there's an error, console log the error. So I can save that. Notice I got rid of the semicolon here and I put it down here because once you put that dot catch, that continues the line. So I refresh, it still works, life's happy, and that's loading data through an API. Alright, if you like this video, please hit subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. I will provide more content in the future and keep it entertaining for you. Thanks a lot.